Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. The COVID-19 pandemic has taken its toll in so many ways, from lives lost to the healthcare system and education. But a lot of our public life also revolves around business and commerce. And while the situation is not dire at the moment, there are some real pressure points in the economy, making life difficult for business owners large and small and their workers. Here this morning to talk about it is a highly respected voice in Concord, Dave Jouvet, interim president of the Business and Industry Association of New Hampshire. Dave, thanks for joining us here on Close Up.
Thanks, Adam. Happy to be here.
So let's talk about what we're seeing so much of in our newscasts right now. It's supply chain issues. We dealt with shortages of certain items during the initial phase of the pandemic, but this seems like it could be more widespread and more impactful as these months go on. So what are we going to see unfold here in New Hampshire?
Well, it's an issue that's creating problems with an important sector of our economy, the manufacturing sector. And the choke point seems to be products coming into the country, especially from the Pacific Rim, China, and other Asian companies. Not that they're not able to produce the products or components that are needed by manufacturing, but they're having a difficulty getting them into the country, especially through ports like Los Angeles, where the backlog is very significant. I read recently there's over 100 ships just anchored off shore waiting to unload their products. So that's creating a problem for manufacturers who rely on components coming from out of the country. The other sector of our economy that's being impacted by it is the restaurant business, where there are various food shortages. Sometimes these are caused by climate change reasons, either too much rain or not enough rain. And so food staples that are used in the restaurant industry are sometimes hard to come by.
What's the perspective right now on vaccine mandates? Obviously, this has been a huge debate at the state level in politics, but you have the same thing going on in business, although the discussions don't necessarily happen in public as much. What is it like within the business community right now? I'm sure there's a similar split as to what you see in public, but again, when the business decides, that's how things go for those employees.
Yeah, I think the newest factor is President Biden's executive order requiring companies of 100 employees or more to be vaccinated. And we're all waiting for the draft interim rules to come from OSHA to understand how that is supposed to be fully implemented. Many of our members are pushing ahead, especially those in the health sector industry who had already had their own vaccine mandates, but also companies here in New Hampshire that have federal contracts. The vaccine mandate is critical for them to implement in order to retain those federal contracts. We're also getting a lot of pushback, though, from other companies who feel that the vaccine mandate is going too far, and they fear that they're going to lose employees who don't want the vaccine to companies of 100 who have less than 100 employees. So I think everyone's in a bit of a wait and see approach, and as you noted, the reaction to these mandates is all over the map.
You mentioned the OSHA, mandate with the enforcement there at the 100 employee level. Do you think we're going to see something similar to the dynamic we saw with the implementation of Obamacare, where, if you're at that 104 employee level, that suddenly these companies might, cut a few jobs to get under that regulation?
Well, I don't see any evidence of that. That's not what our members are talking to me about. And in fact, most of them are trying to add to their employment. They have open jobs that they want to hire for. Some employers that I talk to feel a bit like they've been left off the hook because they may have been supporting a vaccine mandate in their companies because they believe it's in the best interest for the health and safety of their employees, but they knew there would be pushback. So they're telling me that in a sense, this federal mandate takes a little bit of the onus off from them. But like I said, there are other employers who feel differently and are resisting the mandate.
You mentioned the search for employees right now. I want to ask you a question I've been asking a lot of sort of the experts in economics and business. Where are the employees right now? Where did everybody go?
Well, I don't know it's where everybody went. There's a couple of factors. One is New Hampshire in particular, New England in general, is not a part of the country where we're seeing rapid population growth. So in a sense, we believe the economy here is moving faster than the population has a chance to keep up with. And that's especially bad in New Hampshire because we have a graying population. So a number of companies are making efforts to try and retain their older workforce longer rather than having them go into retirement.
How are employers adjusting here? I mean, obviously, I've heard anecdotally that, payrolls are climbing up and up. Are wages really being driven up by the situation?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Every year at the State House, there's discussion about whether New Hampshire should be raising the minimum wage, which is currently set at the federal limit of $7.25. I think that's almost a moot discussion at this point, where many employers, even employers in the food industries, companies like Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's are offering 12, 13, 14. I saw one company offering $15 an hour starting pay. And there's no question that that's being driven by the lack of employees and employers doing what they need to do to try and get new employees through the door.
There's the wage side of things. How does childcare play into what we see with the workforce crunch right now as well?
It's certainly an issue that we're hearing a lot about from our members. And the problem is it is not an issue that is easily solved. There are two things happening. One is that a lot of childcare facilities, especially in the pandemic, are having a difficult time staying open. They've got issues relating to COVID-19 that other companies don't necessarily have to deal with. So that's creating a crunch. The other thing that childcare facilities are having to deal with is the same workforce issues that every other company is having to deal with. So the result is there are fewer childcare facilities available, and when you find them, there's often a waiting line, and the cost is expensive. And so what we see happening is a lot of workers who would otherwise be available for employment. One of the family has to stay home and care for the children.
Another big issue playing into the current business climate is housing in New Hampshire, and that's an evergreen one, but it's definitely become exacerbated in this current climate right now. So I'm sure you've got businesses who are telling you, hey, they almost land the new employee, they want to bring him in, and that person calls them and says, gosh, I can't afford to live here.
Yeah, it happens a lot, especially in the southern part of the state, say anywhere from Concord south and certainly over in the Seacoast area. But it's a real problem statewide. And the reality is housing development, especially rental housing, multifamily housing, has not kept pace with population growth in the state. And that has not happened accidentally. It's happened because many communities around the state don't want to see growth in their communities. But the negative impact of that is that employees or prospective employees don't have places to live or can't afford to live within a reasonable commuting distance of their employer.
Yeah, efforts at the State House to try and streamline some of that development have gotten stuck in recent years. And obviously you referenced the local issue. NIMBY kicks in and suddenly it's very hard to get anything done there. Clearly, powerful forces, local and state, sort of working against any changes. But how do you untie this knot? How do you change and sort of break the dam on this policy issue?
Well, there's no silver bullet. It's incremental steps. What I call, when I'm over at the State House, I call them baby steps. And we will take our small victories. With housing, one small victory that I think is already paying dividends was the establishment of a statewide administrative appeals board. This is where developers of workforce housing who've been turned down at the local level and they feel that decision was wrong can get a quick administrative appeal of that decision rather than having to go to court, which is both time consuming and expensive.
Circling back to the workforce issue, at the state level, are there any policy changes that could be made that could sort of ease some of that pressure?
Well, what we're looking at is working with our educational community, especially the community college system, but also the university system of New Hampshire. I mean, they are the primary pipeline for a next generation workforce. So we are doing things to try and open up lines of communication between employers and our education systems to make sure that The courses that are being taught are relevant for the 21st century jobs that are out there, but also to try and create pathways for students to get into the workforce while they're completing their education.
As we wrap up here, I want to touch on something you see a lot of on social media, sometimes the news as well. It's these situations where you've got these stressed out workers, very few of them sometimes in the service industry or these fast food situations, stressed out customers, and there's just this blow up, customers kind of lose it on these people. What's going on here? I mean, I'm sure you hear from employers that this is an issue, and it's probably making it hard as well for them to keep these employees. What's happening to the fabric of our society in the business community?
Yeah, I don't know. We're living in angry times, and it's distressing. This is happening far too often, especially in the retail sector and the restaurant sector. It sometimes happens because the businesses are not able to staff up to full employment, so service takes a little longer than it normally would. It also happens because sometimes retail outlets, stores, and restaurants are implementing mask or other COVID-related mandates that the state or federal government has handed down, and it's not really the employees' fault, but they're the ones taking the brunt of it. My message to people is just take a deep breath, be patient. We're all in this together. It's a difficult situation, but it isn't helped by getting angry and blowing up at staff people.
All right, Dave Jouvet, interim president of the Business and Industry Association of New Hampshire. Thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Thanks, Adam.